Hello, Real Talkers. I am Sama Morningstar, Feminine Embodiment Queen and Womb Healing Specialist. And I was inspired to get back on here and reintroduce myself and share more about who I am. It's so easy to get caught up in what I'm doing, and I forget to share about how I got to be where I'm at and what makes me who I am. And so I was reflecting on that, and thank you, August, for reminding us the importance of that. So I am sort of the last in a lineage of women. I feel like I have a particular purpose in that, I didn't have any children this time around. And I feel like that was a deliberate choice for me. And I feel like my life was about healing what I saw happening with the women in my family lineage. And why that is because I was very close to my mother from the beginning. And I saw how she didn't value herself enough and allowed herself to be in relationships, well, mainly in a relationship with my biological father and then my adopted father, neither of whom really truly respected her womanhood and respected her as a woman. And it was very painful for me growing up in that environment, especially since I saw a different example with my grandmother and my grandfather. Now, my grandfather treated my grandmother like a queen. And not that they didn't have any problems, but I saw how he respected her as a woman. And then to see how my mom didn't receive that same treatment, didn't demand that treatment, or she tried to, but wasn't able to have that treatment for herself. And growing up in an environment where the woman is not being respected for her feminine power, is not being empowered to be her full self, and is not finding her deeper purpose. Or not being able to realize it. My mom was very much into having children and raising children, but because her feminine power was not nourished and nurtured, there was a lot to be desired in that circumstance. And she did an awesome job anyway, that's the thing. But for me, growing up, I came in as a very sensitive being. And, I was having very direct conversations with God, with light spirit, light beings, spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them, from probably the day that I was born. But all throughout my early childhood, I was very sensitive, and it was very excruciating to witness and be close into this often very violent relationship that my mother was in with my stepdad, or my adopted father. And so then when I became an adult, and I went to college as soon as I could get out of the house. I was in college at age 17, got out of the house as quick as I could. And I began to study psychology, I began to study spirituality, I began to study women's studies and community living and just different lifestyles, because I saw how that disrespect was systematic, especially in those women's studies classes. And the disrespect for the feminine, I saw it everywhere. And I also saw the respect for the feminine, you know, because I had the example of my grandfather, but I also saw that that was not the majority of people that lived that way. The majority of women had never experienced that, but I refused to be in a relationship that wasn't that way. And I'm so grateful for my grandfather for giving me that example. And I asked a lot of questions of myself and in my healing process too, because by the end of college or during college, I was noticing, you know, I was having health issues. I had irritable bowel syndrome from all those years of being in that stressful environment and the early trauma that was unresolved. And I had, I was starting to get back pain at 22 and 23. And I also recognized the importance of this relationship to our bodies and our relationship to the earth and nature and the environment, and how that the disrespect for our bodies and the neglect of our bodies that was systematic in the culture and society, and the disrespect and neglect of ecology and the earth in our everyday operations and like that was the same thing. I recognize that this is the same thing. You know, violating the ecology of the earth, taking more than we give to the earth, taking more than we give to our bodies, was the same thing for me. And so I made a big choice early on to not live that way. And I remember sitting bolt upright in bed. I'd taken sort of a vision quest journey to really dig into my family, my adopted father's family lineage in Mexico, to see where all this pain came from and what it was about and what my purpose was after I graduated from college. I remember sitting bolt upright in bed after just witnessing this disrespect for women in the family lineage, even more intense than what I'd experienced growing up, and internalized so much in the women that they were sick. I mean, the women that I was getting to know there were very sick physically because of their own internalized disrespect for their femininity and for womanhood in general. And so I remember sitting bolt upright in bed, knowing the next steps in my life. I knew exactly where I was going to go and make money to pay for, in a fun way, to pay for my massage training. I had $37 in the bank. But I went and I did exactly that, and by the end of that year, I had the year following graduation from college, I had my massage therapy license certification, and I had all this training and inspiration for exploring holistic healing, because I made a promise that night when I sat up in bed. I need to make my body health my number one priority, because if I don't have that, what do I've got, you know? If I neglect that, everything else is jeopardized. And so I did that, and so my journey with holistic healing started 25, 30 years ago, or more really, because I started to explore vegetarianism, veganism, even earlier when I was still in college. And healthy practices, yoga and things like that, massage. Even then, people were already paying me for massage before I ever went to massage school. And so it's been then a journey since then of deepening that practice and learning how our bodies, how important embodiment is. And I got to a point when I realized, I wasn't going to be able to have a healthy sexual relationship until I dealt with the degree of shutdown and stored past emotional trauma that was in my body from growing up in the environment where the feminine was disrespected. And so I started focusing on the womb like 20 years ago, because I realized, gosh, here I am in my 30s. Well, okay, so that was, close to 20 years ago. Here I am in my late 20s, early 30s, and I feel totally shut down sexually. Not completely. I mean, the first 3 months of any relationship, I was all kinds of fun, but then after 3 months, boom. As soon as the relationship got intimate, any kind of intimacy, emotional intimacy, where it started to touch deeper inside my heart, where there were, any kind of conflict or communication challenges, where I was going to have to speak my truth or ask for something or like that, where I just did not have any skills, that I hadn't been trained in any kind of skills like that. And that's when it would shut down and wouldn't work anymore. So, and plus I was having, then I made the decision, okay, I need to make this a priority now, because I just was not willing to accept that as the way it was for my life. And so I quit everything, and it was also a low point for me professionally as well, because I hadn't figured out how to do business. And even though I had my massage training, it was easier for me to get a job as a teacher. And so I'd been teaching kids, but I kept trying to help the kids to heal their emotional challenges, or, so that because I saw how their academic challenges were related to their emotional or physical ailments. And I was doing Waldorf teaching, which is very integrated, and I was leaning into that part of their schooling. And so I realized that, I need to be really directly working in the healing arts, because I hit a real low with the teaching. It was just not what I was meant to be doing. And so I moved to a sacred hot springs community where people were focusing on dietary change, raw food, dietary cleansing, tantra, and yoga. And I dove into that and really started a second wave of my own spiritual awakening. The first wave had happened in massage school, and the second wave there at the community. And then I met my yoga teachers who were building a tantric yoga ashram in Humboldt County in Northern California, and I eventually went there and helped to build that ashram out in the woods. And at a certain point, about 4 or 5 years ago, after 10 years of being involved in this very tight-knit, close-knit community, practicing spiritual tantric yoga practices in everyday aspects of all everyday life, all 24/7. After 10 years of doing that, my husband and I, who were both there at the time, realized that we wanted to be together, and that ashram environment wasn't very supportive for couples being together and taking their relationship into the level of spiritual partnership that we wanted to take it. And so we left. We had built that ashram from the ground up. He stood to inherit it, and we both stood to inherit it together. But we needed to do what we needed to do on our own, on our own terms. And so we gave that all up and left in devotion to that we needed to do it on our own terms. We felt a call. And so we eventually returned to that original hot springs place where I lived and before, where I met him originally. And we returned there about 2-3 years ago now, and had a whole nother development of who we are, but then the whole place burned down in wildfires, which was a message to me and him both that we couldn't rely on that spiritual community anymore, that we needed to create it for ourselves. And that was some hard lessons, because it's like, no, you can't do it. Everywhere we went to recreate that for ourselves was just, okay, we're going to burn it down now, because you can't have that now. You have to create it for yourself. And so, and then, I found another hot springs to do massage out of, and then that was taken away. The management there and I just didn't jive, and finally recently. So, but in these places, I really got to dive into the womb of the earth feeling, and these hot springs, or these waters coming up from the center of the earth. And I just got to download all of this information of connection to the earth, connection to the womb, and connection to the body, and how that connection is my embodiment practice, where so many spiritual practices take us into transcendence. We're going to transcend the body. And that's one movement of energy that can help uplift us and help us rise out of the suffering of our human experience, and access and connect with something of a different vibration. And it's a powerful direction of practice. And I practiced that way for many, many years. And I got to a point where the pain in my body started speaking up, and because I'd made that promise to myself, and my back pain was starting to come back, and my womb pain, even though I was doing all the right dietary choices and like that, my womb pain was starting to come back. I was starting to have very early perimenopausal symptoms, hot flashes and things like that. I had to say, okay, I need to change the direction of this. I'm going to be fully embodying, bringing spirit into the body. I've cleansed the body out. I've transcended a lot of the suffering patterns, rewired things. And now in this embodiment, there's an even deeper rewiring. So I don't know if any of this makes sense to any of you, but I just wanted to get on here and share about who I am, and a little bit of background about that, to just share about that. And so I would love to connect with you all more and learn more about you, and we'll connect more soon. All right, thanks so much. Take care.